Hey guys, welcome to Gwent. Let's have a talk about Gaunter and predictability. Gaunter is a very special card. He actually, so to speak, punishes your opponent for being predictable, but he achieves that in a very random and gambly way, and that makes him not worth running. Best case scenario is a 5 plus any card in your deck. So ideally a 5 plus another gold card. But you have to guess whether a random bronze or silver is higher or lower than 5. And if you guess anything, well, if you fail or tie, then you clearly get punished and Gaunter is just not worth playing. It would be a lot easier if I had to link the Gwent DP decklist, because I'm pretty sure that I could do that in at least 90% of the cases. And I do love seeing a card like Gaunter getting experimented with, whether this is too good or too bad. But he is just too random to be useful currently. But I would love to see some cards that come in that all about just punishing the predictable decks. If meta is just all about going up against the same guys all the time and you know their exact deck list, of course you try to tweak your deck to counter them, but many times that is not necessarily enough. And what I would define a tier 1 deck is that you can afford to be predictable. Everyone knows what you have, but they can't shut it down effectively. If the counters just can't touch you, if you run a deck and your opponents can't afford to run the counters, because if they run the counters against your decks, assuming there are even counters against your deck that actually just can beat you, then they're gonna suffer in the other matchups, and ultimately they're gonna end up with a lower win rate than you. So maybe tier 2 decks can have a positive win rate against tier 1 decks, but tier 2 decks still the losers. And a tier 1 deck is basically what I call a tier 1 deck, is that everyone knows what you got, but they can beat you. And I would love to see options and cards that just like, hey, if I know what you got, I should be able to beat you, and I should be able to punish you big time. And I would love to see cards like that, like Gaunter getting more serious attention, more serious, like, you know, like guess between 3 cards which one they got. Like, you could do that no problem. Gaunter would be a good card because you could guess every time what they got, because oh boy, it's no big secret. Of course, as time progresses, you have an easier time figure out what their deck is. Maybe it's a bit harder with the golds. You can, I don't know. I think the bronze, silvers, and golds maybe like equally hard to figure out. Who knows? It depends on the deck. However, I would love to see cards like Gaunter come in as bronzes and silvers, just to punish predictability, at least in one faction, or maybe who knows what, because it would be like a game changer basically. That would basically give the message to, you know, if you're predictable, you just lose. So tier 1 decks would have a hard counter. Any decks that is predictable would automatically be invalid, and it would be a way to make, so to speak, tier 1 decks invalid. And I would be a huge fan of that. So anyway, that's it, guys. Tell me what you think. I would love to make tier 1 decks invalid, because if everyone knows what you got and they still can take you, because the options are just not in the game or just not efficient enough to take you, and that's the metaphor like for weeks, and the devs are just trying to do something, then again it's not gonna be efficient, because there's gonna be again more tier 1 decks that cannot be efficiently countered, and cards that punish predictability would go a long way in punishing those decks that everyone knows they can link the exact deck list of, like basically every time, yet they just don't have the options that punish them. I'm not saying these cards need to be extremely strong, but they should be basically an auto-include if the meta is predictable. And if the meta is not predictable, they would be not good. But it would be a good way to just, so to speak, get rid of tier 1 decks. Tier 1 decks, forget about them. In order to be tier 1, you would need to be unpredictable and a pretty cool guy. That's it, guys. Really tell me what you think, and see you next time.